Okay, sorry if I sound really horrible, but I've been sick. And I was going to talk about cultural appropriation as like a whole thing in general. Because I've been hearing and seeing like a ton of videos about it, and I'm actually have like on the other spectrum of what everybody's been saying, so I really wanted to talk about that. People were really talking about cultural appropriation of like black people's hairstyles as opposed to like a white person having dreadlocks and being praised for it, and a black person having dreadlocks and being condemned for it. And black people can't have like natural hair in a job setting, or they're said they will be fired. And white people are also not allowed to have dreadlocks and being in a work environment. It's just not applicable. People with dreads or puffy hair or something like that that looks kind of like black people hair is also seen as being unruly or gross, or especially dreads. Especially dreads, it's considered gross, and a lot of people won't give you a job because of it. But if that solely was the reason that cultural appropriation shouldn't be a thing, because you're taking a black person's hair and being praised for it, or that black people can't get jobs or are seen as less because of their natural hair, it's also just like having piercings or having tattoos. You are said you can't have a job because of it, but lots of people do still get a job because of it. And a lot of people will say, you need to change that or else you're not going to get a job, but you can still get a job because of it. And also changing that and saying, well, since I can't get a job because I have dreadlocks, you shouldn't be able to get a job because you can't have dreadlocks, it's not helping. I feel like if instead of changing and saying, well, obviously I just can't get a job because I have natural hair, and even though you probably will get a very smaller margin of jobs that you can have because you have natural hair, you shouldn't just give up or say that nobody can have it just because you don't have a job because of it. Because that's the problem. You should just say, hey, it doesn't matter, I'm going to find a job no matter what, and regardless of what my hair looks like. We have to implement that this hair is okay, and dreadlocks are not dirty, and it doesn't mean you're any less of a worker, a good worker. Just like having a neck tattoo or something doesn't make you immediately a bad worker, or having a piercing on your face doesn't make you immediately a bad worker. It just means you look different. Also, cultural appropriation as a whole is somebody taking somebody else's culture, and what I've heard is like they're reducing the cultural significance of it. So a person at Coachella wearing a headdress and not really knowing where it comes from, is just like, oh, it's an Indian thing, and not really knowing where it comes from or this cultural significance of it is diminishing it from what it actually means, and sort of erasing it from our culture in general. Like how when we invaded America and the whole thing, and we're taking the land from the Native Americans and forcing them into like the Native American groups or their little settlements, and they all started learning English and started adopting like our culture, and their Native American culture started just kind of disappearing because we invaded and took over, and it just seemed like what had to be done. Like, it just started invading everything. Everybody started dressing like Americans, and it became the norm. Although there were some small groups of Native Americans that really wanted to keep their culture, their original culture, alive, and they really wanted everybody to remember that. And that sort of survived, but it kind of didn't, because we took over so much. Culture as a whole is meant to move. It's meant to be like a fluid thing. Changes is how other people interact, how we start seeing things as a whole. Maybe like we think one thing is okay, and then we stop thinking that thing is okay and move on to something else. And that's just how it's supposed to work. Culture as a whole doesn't need to be something that is just one thing, and we hold really dearly onto that one thing and think that's the end-all be-all. It is important to know where we came from and, like, find the significance in the past, but we need to realize that all of this is going to change anyway. All of this is going to fade away, and it's going to change into something completely different. America, from when it was settled by our people versus now, is incredibly different. The things that we believe and the culture that they had and the culture that we have is totally different. And that happens all the time. It's happening constantly. And I think holding on to it so dearly and not wanting it to change is kind of futile anyway. But I think the cultural significance of things should be at least understood, so that we can have it as a thing to move off of. You should know where something came from, but not necessarily want it for the rest of your life, and want it for all the generations afterward. You shouldn't say, I wear t-shirt and pants, and that's my culture. Everybody from my culture and everybody down the generation should wear a shirt and pants, because that's really important. And it may be important to you, and if it is important to you, you should really go for it. But you have to realize that along the line somewhere, somebody's going to make a dress, and people are going to start wearing dresses, and that culture is going to be over. It's going to be futile. Fixating onto one thing is not important. Fixating and saying that this race should have this culture and only this race should have this culture, and that's really important, isn't really important. Culture spreads and it changes, and everybody should be allowed to be open to each other's culture. Everybody should be treated the same within that culture too. Like, if I had dreads and if another person had dreads, we should be treated the same. Culture is our way of interacting with the entire world, and it's incredibly important for us as a species and as a race. We need to exchange culture. We need to have culture so I can understand what's happening in the other parts of the world, and how they can understand us and we can understand them. We can make new traditions out of all of this. We can make new things for us to share. We can make new culture from the old culture. We can make all of these beautiful things, and that's what's important. It's important to be kind to each other and to understand each other on different levels. That's what's really important. And that's all I really wanted to say. So, have a good day. I love you all. And subscribe and like, and I will get to you really soon with a new video.